Welcome everybody also from our side. My name is Birgit Hoinle and Arnim Wiek, and we want to start this topic about a topic that is perfect for a lunch lecture because it's about food and how food and public catering can be important layer for sustainable transformation. And Arnim and Wiek, we are working together on this topic, public catering, here at the University of Freiburg and me at University of Hohenheim. Also, right now I'm on a research day at the Center for Food Studies in Toronto. That's why I'm just woken up to participate here. Yeah, and the topic of food is a also often very emotionally discussed topic, as you can see with these two newspaper headliners, especially when it's about meat. And we have here selected two articles that show this directly, like the Guardian 3 years ago, who reported very enthusiastically and very positively about the case of Berlin, that now the university canteens have now almost meat-free offers, and reacting also to the students' demands that they want more vegan and vegetarian options. So they did a huge change. And as you might know, in public catering, there are a lot of people, like 16 million people every year eating, and the Berlin University canteen has a lot of students, so it makes a big change now when they change the offer. And so the Guardian was very positively reporting about it, whereas Remakes reported about the case of Freiburg, where you might know 3 years ago there was the introduction of vegetarian meal for pupils of all primary schools. And so the article is very critical about it. It also quotes the Peter Haug, the agriculture minister of Baden-Württemberg, that stated, no, children should have all options and develop all their tastes. So here you see how contrarily it is discussed, and it makes it also more challenging when we're speaking about how can sustainable transition can be introduced in the public catering system. Next, please. And so we are working together on this issue from science, but very transdisciplinary perspective. So we, as an example, have posted here two articles by Arnim Wiek related with the projects he's doing at the Innovation Campus now in Freiburg, and the other one is an exploratory study I did about food justice in school catering places, where I did interviews with actors all along the value chains of school food. And yeah, next, please. And that's a bit also what we want to present you today. So give you insights in our ongoing and also completed projects. So we want to talk first about what is the relevance of public canteens for sustainable transformation of the food system. Then give you insights into completed studies. One that's about public canteens in the Freiburg region, and others is a comparative study between Germany and France, more with a focus on policy measures and organization models. And then two ongoing research projects in the public catering sector in Baden-Württemberg, and also what are success factors for more regional and organic offers in public catering. And then we hope for a fruitful discussion with you.
Okay, I'm taking it over from here. Welcome everyone to this lunch lecture. I will be quite quick, or I hope we are overall quite quick, so that we really get to the outlook and the discussion section too. Let me quickly sketch out a couple of important aspects regarding the relevance of the public canteens for the sustainability transformation of the food system. Our agricultural system and our food economy overall is associated with a large number of damages and costs. You see here on those pictures a couple of different indications, whether this is related to some of the climate change impacts, but also climate change contributions through high emissions, energy intensive structures we have in agriculture and the food system. We have a number of economic challenges, all the way from food poverty. On the right-hand side, you see one of those distribution centers for people with challenges in this direction, to a large number of our especially small and medium-sized food businesses, agriculture, as well as food processing, distribution, all the way into retail, are challenged by very high competition. And we see a lot of closures and bankruptcies in the sectors. On the lower side, on the right-hand side, lower part of the pictures, you see also that we have a lot of issues related to social dimensions of sustainability when it comes to food production and the food system. These are indications of seasonal labor that is often not treated very well. We have child labor issues, especially when it comes to global supply chains. Overarchingly, we can say that our current structure and processes in the food economy are characterized by a fairly high loss of economic resilience in the food economy, especially because of high market concentration and the tendency to move more and more towards larger to largest food companies, corporations. We have issues in the environmental dimension of sustainability regarding climate change, biodiversity loss, and also water contamination, mostly associated with agricultural practices. I mentioned the social dimensions with wage discrepancies and exploitation. And then we have also the broad consumer side, where we see more and more, especially in industrialized nations, unhealthy eating habits. Also, on the other hand, lack of healthy food access. We have a significant food waste issue around the world. All of this is very well documented in the scientific literature. From an economic perspective, and this is important because we need to see in how far this is also an issue that goes deep, runs very deep in our society, goes all the way to the core of the economy. It is that there are a great deal of associated costs with what I just described before in terms of damages and negative effects of the food system. We're just indicating this here, if you're interested, the Food System Economics Commission has published recently an account of some of these challenges. They are monitoring the externalized costs of climate change through greenhouse gas emissions, but also impacts that are associated with water use, with land use conversion, and a number of other issues. And this is worldwide a very significant burden that we are putting on particular parts of our society, but also a burden for future generations. When it comes to the causal factors, what is causing this? What is driving these negative effects that we just described? There are particular structures and, I would say, ideologies in the enterprises. Growth and profit maximizing ideology, the outsourcing and externalization of costs that we see widely, and even the active lobbying of deregulating in critical sustainability issues. Consumers, again, very generally speaking, have a preference for low prices, in part also a lack of solidarity with socioeconomically weaker groups in our society. And at the same time, we have in the supporting functions of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, politics, financing, and training, not sustainability oriented, but often very conventional ways of supporting businesses. There's a lack of support, for instance, for SMEs. We have a great challenge in terms of scarcity of apprenticeships in particular domains, but also just in general qualified labor. We still see that prioritizing dominant economic interests in the domain of large corporations is still quite dominating, and a large area of action that needs reform are misguided subsidies, especially in agriculture. Now, what can public canteens do about this? They have, especially the public canteens, so we are focusing a little bit more on this today, although there are also a large number of private canteens as part of businesses. Public canteens are usually not oriented towards growth and profit maximization. Therefore, they are, at least in part, also open to more internalization of cost and the regulation of sustainability issues, because they have a semi-public or a fully public component to it. Consumers, I will talk about this very briefly on the next slide, pay a price, although it is a subsidized price, in public canteens, and this creates a very interesting hybrid financing model for public canteens that we feel is a promising intervention point to support sustainability transformation of the food system. Politics, financing, and training are usually also differently oriented towards public canteens because of the stronger interest in public health and benefits on that side. And subsidies are usually or more and more targeting also more sustainability practices and health-oriented measures in public canteens. I wanted to briefly tell you a little bit about the financing of these transformations. Again, this report that I mentioned earlier is also quite interesting under this perspective. What we usually can say about the more conventional perspective on how we get from the current state to a more healthy, food-oriented system that is grounded in fair regional organic practices in agriculture and food economy overarchingly. So on the one hand side, that we think that consumers should, redirect their purchasing patterns, and then we might be able to, achieve that. On the other hand, we have a lot of trust in subsidy structures from the governmental agencies on the various levels. But what we have seen over the last several decades is that these two approaches are just not cutting it. They are not getting to the level of transformation that we need in order to avoid, for instance, critical climate change and really deal with some of the significant social justice issues in our global value chains and supply chains in the food system. So we would like to argue for a stronger perspective and a stronger emphasis on public canteens, because they have a very unique domain of influence when it comes to contributions to the sustainable food system transformation. And that is in part due to their public, private, semi-public, you can name it differently, this hybrid structure, right? So there are, on the one hand side, payments coming directly from the consumers. They are funding what kind of food is being provided there. But at the same time, we see subsidy structure supporting this as well. And these kind of hybrid financing model, that might be exactly what we need. We need some commitment, definitely from the consumers, but we also need these kind of complementary commitments from the public domains to be really successful in financing the food system transformation. The other very important aspect in the leverage of public canteens is that we have, and Birgit also already mentioned this in her opening statement, we have a lot of them, right? So public canteens, we have them in the hundreds, and depending on what the level of the region is in the province of Baden-Württemberg, for instance, even in the thousands, all the way up to almost 10,000 canteens in Baden-Württemberg. There are the private are included there as well, but most of them are public. And we have millions of meals that are being served in those. So it's a very important leverage point. And you see here one of the statements of a prominent player in this, the former president of the German Nutrition Society, articulating that very clearly. So concluding from this overarching perspective on the relevance, very short, and some of these things we have generalized, and we could obviously provide you with more information if you're interested in this. But public canteens hold a very strong purchasing power. They have a major influence on public nutrition and health, and they have, as I mentioned a little bit in more detail, a special, particular type of, and as we think, a very promising financing model. And through this, they have a major influence really on the sustainability of the food system. However, it really requires a strong direction towards sustainability in order to realize that potential, in order to really contribute to the sustainability transformation. And we'd like to show you some of our research that is trying to support the system in advancing in this direction. Birgit, back to you.
Yes. So I have undertaken a study together with a colleague from France, Jocelyne Parot, because we were very interested exactly in this question: how can public canteens be a layer for sustainable transformations? And what we were interested in were that in France and Germany, school canteens are organized in a different way. So in France, but they also have a longer tradition in offering whole day care, like in primary school for children. So all the time they were already offering school meals, a bit different than in Germany, and they are mostly like 50% managed under public municipal control, so through municipal enterprises, what we will call in German kommunaler Eigenbetrieb, so kind of central kitchens that then employed cooks from the municipality, from these municipal enterprises that then provide the meals for the children. Whereas in Germany, it's a bit old cipher, but it's about 86% that this public service is outsourced to private catering companies that the municipalities search for via the public tenders. So they're doing like every 5 years public tender to get an offer by a private company. Or in some cases, we see volunteer associations that were funded mostly by parents that then provide lunch. I think they mostly were initiated due to a lack of offer in that time. So we see here two different organization models, and then the question was, what are potentials and challenges of these two different school food management models regarding more just and sustainable school food procurement? Next, please. So what we did was we were undertaking qualitative interviews with experts of municipal councils and city administration in two federal states in Germany, was Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, and in France, Normandy and Bretagne. And yeah, we try to integrate rural and urban regions and these different models, and we then analyzed our data according to the sustainability dimensions, like the ecological dimensions, organic and food waste, economic dimension, the involvement of local farmer in regional value chains, and the social dimensions, the criteria of accessibility, participation, and education, and diversity. Next, please. So, I cannot go into details right now, but just quickly to give an overview, what was the big difference regarding organic food share and school food was that in France, they have national guidelines that define for public and also for private catering that they have to fulfill 50% quality criteria, which can be also labels of geographical origin, fair trade labels, and within this 50%, 20% has to be organic. So that was established since 2022. So I think they're still in the introduction phase, but it's like a national guideline that has to be fulfilled. And they also have to conduct food loss and waste assessment and strategies to reduce it. On the other side, we see in Germany that they're more that we are working more like with voluntary guidelines and initiatives. So there's this goal of having 30% organic share in public catering until 2030. But the problem is that we have no data at all. Where are we right now? There are estimates about 2%, but there are no data basically. And we see here that we're working more with incentives, like there's this new scheme for organic certification for the canteens. There are some municipalities organized in the organic city network that we can see that they have also higher organic shares. And the food waste assessment is punctual and rather voluntary. Schools that do this and others that not. Regarding the involvement of local farmers, here we see the potential that these municipal enterprises have in France. So that in the interview came out that they have more direct partnerships with local farmers. Because it's a huge purchasing power then. So that there's more scope of action to directly make contracts with them, and also this before mentioned national law EGalim. I assume I pronounce it wrong, but that allows and also promotes these regional quality criteria like a defined geographic origin. Whereas in the interviews in Germany came out that due to the European competition law, that with the free competition norm, you cannot make a public tender and then define you want local food. So usually the school canteens are provided from whole from the big scale wholesale traders, and in the public tender you can write organic criteria but not local. So that's usually not a criteria. There's some use strategies to with seasonal food, but it's very low rate. Yeah. And the last part, the social dimension of sustainability, we see France has a social pricing system to secure accessibility. And then again, with the municipal enterprises are more potentials that municipal council members also have control what is happening, and their parents are sometimes involved in in canteen committees. In Germany, on the other hand, we have more the system of subsidies, like with the Bildungs- und Teilhabepaket to secure accessibility. But we see also a huge price dependency on the offers of the catering companies. So some municipalities said to us, we are happy if we get an offer at all. Don't talk with me about organic share. And we saw more potential for participation in the voluntary association canteens. There was also a model like pupils cook for pupils, but they're also dependent again on this voluntary engagement of the parents. So I think that it's not in all contexts possible like this. Yeah, so give over to Anne.
Thank you, Birgit. So I'm presenting you kind of following up on this. So we started with a broader policy perspective and how these framing conditions in France and Germany are quite different. And therefore, we have also different practices in the public canteens in those two countries. And this is now a study we conducted a few years back where we wanted to actually get primary data on the state of sustainability in public canteen in a particular region. We focused on the Freiburg region more as a pilot project to get a sense for what is the situation also with respect to some of the data that Birgit mentioned are so hard to obtain on a national level, right? So we try to do that now, at least on a regional level. We picked the Freiburg region, with various districts as the study area and did a survey with 30 public canteens there. All public canteen types were represented, so from daycare over school catering and hospitals and so on. There was a little bit a different kind of distribution in terms of what the main types were that were represented, but we achieved at least getting somewhat in contact with more than 200 institutions through this survey. And we also did a follow-up expert interviews with select ones, but also with experts in the region regarding public catering. And some of the findings I'd like to present to you today. We used sustainability criteria that were quite similar to the ones that Birgit mentioned earlier. So we had social, environmental, economic, and governance criteria. We were looking into, what is the share of fair trade products, for example, or regional ones, organic ones. We wanted to get a little bit of a sense for the economic viability of those canteens and other aspects. And obviously today we can't go into the details. It's a quite detailed study we conducted there, but just looking at the main insights here, we can see green meaning, we are on a very good pathway towards sustainability. Yellow means we have done some initial steps in this direction, but it's still a long way to go. And red ones are the ones where we really need to step up our game to really align with sustainability ideas. And what we see here overarchingly, again, I can't go into all of the details, is that there is still quite a long way for public canteens to move towards sustainability. So when you look into the details, whether this is organic sourcing or regional sourcing, whether this is fair trade products, or also the support of vegan, vegetarian eating habits in terms of the DGE recommendations or planetary health diet recommendations, there is still a good share of aspects that need to be improved across, the hundreds of public canteens and catering, public catering businesses that we included into this study. So to conclude from what we have seen there are a number of specific actions that need to be taken to make more progress towards sustainability. And again, some of this quite nicely aligns with what Birgit found more on a national or in this, cross-national comparative study. So there are particular ways that we need to improve on the social dimension, where these are, compliance with DGE guidelines, especially the new ones. So planetary health diet as an important reference point, proportion of fair trade products, like I mentioned, but the same is true for organic and regional products. We have still fairly low proportions there, far away from the aspired 30 to 40%, even the 30 to 40%, you could argue, are not quite getting us to a sustainable level. And then also on the economic side, there are a couple of different things, especially when it comes to pre-processed products and a number of other issues that need to be addressed to make towards sustainability. So looking into both of these studies, right, on the one hand side, we see, the sustainability of public catering in general, as far as we can see from the still rudimentary data collection that we have done and data analysis we have done. But we see that we need additional efforts from public canteens in all dimensions of sustainability to really make progress towards the transformation we are addressing here. The study that Birgit presented is nicely demonstrating that there are different pathways towards, sustainability or managing public canteens more in line with sustainability principles. And you could see, some advantages in a bottom-up approach, some advantages more in a top-down regulatory approach. Germany versus France. But it seems, at least initial findings suggest that the latter, the top-down one, is more effective in achieving sustainability goals. Municipal public catering companies in France versus the outsourcing is another observation. But one of the big challenges is you can only outsource if there is a functioning market, right? That there are a lot of public catering companies that would actually offer healthy regional organic food, and they don't. So outsourcing comes to its limits. And so we are seeing actually in the public catering sector that even in Germany, more municipalities are thinking about internalizing these services. So bringing the public catering service really back into public canteens that are run by the municipalities themselves. And again, as from a research perspective, the lack of data is very obvious for the whole sector. And so evidence-based policy making is really at this point not possible. And this is probably from our research perspective, one of the strongest points of where we all need to do a better job to really inform policy on a solid, evidence base. I'm handing it over again to Birgit to present now from some of our ongoing efforts, research efforts. This is all needs to be taken with a little bit of, caution here because it's underway. But we wanted to open a little bit our workshops, our research studios, so to speak, to give you a sense of what's going on in our research groups at the moment.
Yeah, so that is an ongoing study. We are in the middle of the data analysis about what are success factors for increasing the share of organic and local food procurement in Baden-Württemberg. Next, please. So, yeah, what are key factors and challenges? So the idea here was to get like an overall view on this issue. So we undertook a systematic literature review and analyzed 26 peer-reviewed articles from the European context, project reports of the German context, as there are, I think there's more and more interest in this topic. So there are a lot of project reports now coming out. So we try to get an overview of it. And additionally, we are right now still also undertaking expert interviews and going to the content analysis. And here I show you like our first results about what are the major barriers and key factors. So the barriers that were mentioned in the articles, here mainly the scientific articles, is that there's a lack of ability of regional and organic products. The economic factors are crucial. So public kitchens work with a very limited budget. The before mentioned procurement policy of the European procurement law, and the consumer demand that is very heterogeneous, especially when it comes to meat consumption, as described before. And what are now key factors? What was often mentioned was networking and cooperation all along the value chain. So bringing producers, processors, and canteens together. Also very crucial, the political willingness and motivation on a municipal level or above. Transformation in the kitchen, so I will outline it later when it's zoom in, and the participation of like pupils and parents that have to be involved in this process. So I make now a zoom in into two of these factors, like the often mentioned barrier of lack of availability of regional and organic products. So that was mentioned also from articles of other European countries. Here I have a quote that explains this very well. It's from a study of Braun in the region of Berlin-Brandenburg. So a constraining factor is the lack of incentives for the use of locally produced organic food in the procurement guidelines, combined with a very limited budget for sourcing. So there are no pre-processing facilities in the region, while work organization, school catering services depends heavily on pre-processed food. So we see here in this single quote several constraints, that is a limited budget, the procurement guidelines, and here in this point, especially the lack of processing facilities. Like in Germany, we see that there's a declining number of mills, of dairies that were in former times were there to process wheat, to process milk, and the canteens are depending it because they need the potatoes already like peeled and not start peeling in the morning with these quantities. That's also the reason why often local farmers cannot directly provide food for public canteens because they need it in high amounts at specific times. Price plays a role, not for including organic food, but it's a limit for increasing its volume. And so these constraints also bring us to the key factor, which is the networking all along the value chains, especially that in producer association and then again promoting these processing facilities for public canteens. Example could be the biodistretti, like organic model regions, we call it here in Biomusterregionen, that are in Italy more developed for this local organic food to public catering. Next, please. And the transformation in the kitchen, as a quote that explains it very well, that transformation can only succeed if employees in the out-of-home catering sector are able to prepare tasty, creative, nutritionally complete low meat or plant-based meats. So this involves good staff training as a key factor for the desired transformation. So the idea would be to, from a holistic perspective, to involve also the whole kitchen team into this process when it comes to develop more plant-based meals as proper meals, not just as substitutes. This is very difficult in the current context of shortage of qualified staff. Also, the kitchens themselves are outsourcing activities, but it would need really to involve the teams into the process. Also, our vocational training has no focus or very little focus on organic and regional and vegetarian dishes. So there would be necessary a change in this. And also what was mentioned was more exchange among kitchen managers and learning from best practice examples in this aspect. Yeah, that underlines it that it's in very in different countries also seen as a need, as a transition to more plant-based meal options, in the sense not only of substituting but as a whole process.
Thank you, Birgit. I'm taking over one more time here with a final insight into an ongoing study. It's a large-scale study that is funded through the Innovation Campus Sustainability here in Baden-Württemberg, a collaboration between the University of Freiburg and the KIT in Karlsruhe. And this study is a large-scale study on the sustainability transformation of the public catering sector. I will not be able to really delve into all of the details of that study, that research undertaking here. I might highlight a couple of points that Birgit mentioned in her study and how we can also already see what are some of the solutions to overcome the barriers and to really leverage those success factors and to realize those success factors that she in the initial findings presented to you. So what we actually see when we are looking at the broader field of research on public canteens is that there are a number of specific needs. So we have seen more and more research over the last several years, but there are still some very important open areas that need to be addressed in additional studies. The first one is, in particular regarding scalability, that sustainability measures in public canteens, we have a lot of pilot projects, we have a lot of individual single case studies, but we have rarely have seen studies that link pilot projects to larger scale implementation. How do we diffuse these innovative practices towards sustainability so that they are not remaining in those advanced public canteens, but rather become mainstream? The same is true on the public catering policy level, especially when it comes to municipalities. Municipalities have quite a bit of influence on this one. Birgit mentioned that several times. In France, the situation is differently because municipalities have largely ownership over the public canteens, and all the way to actually that chefs in the kitchens are administrative staff of the municipality. A structural analysis of the public catering sector is very important because of the lack of data mentioned earlier, and we also try for the state of Baden-Württemberg, the province of Baden-Württemberg, to develop together in very collaborative settings with industry, the businesses, public canteens, as well as with civil society organization and obviously the political organizations, a strategy for scaling and transformation in this sector. And this is important because, and this is why I mentioned below, I don't go into all of the details, we have quite a bit of research, but it is of a particular nature. How often single case study oriented, a lot on individual public canteens, very rarely on sector-wide and broader issues that pertain to scaling and sector-wide transformation. In our research, we have been quite successful in building a large transdisciplinary partnership with practitioners or practice, organization, and businesses. On the one hand side, large public canteens like the University Clinic here in Freiburg, or the public catering services of the student services in our regions, both in Freiburg as well as in Karlsruhe, and then a number of different organizations that support us with these broader issues of changes in policies, conducive funding to advance sustainability practices in those canteens. We also have a good number of research cooperations lined up here, obviously in our region, but also nationally and internationally. This is really a hot topic, I would say, in sustainability research or associated fields. And I'm also very happy to report that we have recently won a research grant funded by the European Union in the Interreg program. So we will be working together with our colleagues in France and in Switzerland here in the Upper Rhine region to address some of the issues that we have been mentioning before. So a tri-national, comparative and collaborative research setting that should yield advances in all three regions. The study is structured into three parts or three levels. We have a micro level at the very bottom where we work with individual public canteens. Most of them are more like a little bit like bundles of public canteens. So we're looking again for scaling effects. And so developing and experimentally testing sustainability innovations in those canteens. That's what we will be doing over the next 2 years. We have a meso level where we are working closely with municipalities as well as the province in collecting, operationalizing, and also testing political intervention opportunities. And then finally, as I mentioned, we are very interested in the sector-wide perspective of public catering, so collecting and analyzing statistical data. Very challenging, but we see a lot of interest and hopefully in the future also support from official agencies in Baden-Württemberg in particular to see what is scalable and how we can move towards an overall strategy for the sector. Just very recently, we completed last week a wonderful workshop. We had over 50 participants from administration, public canteens, nonprofit organizations, and research organizations, mostly from Baden-Württemberg, but also some national and even international experts joined us. We looked into 5 policy instruments, and 2 of them were directly relevant to what Birgit presented before, to some of the barriers, right? So we have often a lack of procurement guidelines and policies that really, demand that regional and organic food is being incorporated into those meals of public canteens. And there is Freiburg model. It was developed, it was mentioned earlier, and Kerstin Siebenmorgen from the city was with us and presented this particular instrument and how it can be used by other municipalities to really advance from that side sustainability in our public canteens. And the other one was an instrument. We had the pleasure that Philipp Stierand from Kantine Zukunft from Berlin gave a wonderful presentation on some of the staff training, some of the transformations they have done with hundreds of canteens in the Berlin region. And there was, again, the workshop session focused on how other municipalities can use a similar approach to address some of the barriers that Birgit identified in the literature analysis. There was also a strong interest in collaborating with some of the research groups present in the future. So that was an important event to bring the notion of sustainability is possible, and what municipalities, what the government and also administration can do to support this. That event was quite successful. Yeah, we're wrapping up with an outlook, and Birgit, you can jump in there if anything speaks to your points in particular. But most of this we have mentioned now several times. Maybe just quickly, I'm picking out a couple of things. Birgit mentioned, pre-processing infrastructure is really often missing. It needs to be developed. Investments need to be guided towards this, right? So the financing side, again, as we mentioned, is a very important one. Needs to be done there. The collaboration that Birgit mentioned across the supply chains, right? So matching larger canteens with regional organic producers from smaller ones, right? Some pooling cooperative models could help there to develop that further. And maybe just in general, at least I think we share really that sentiment that we cannot stay in the niches. We need to find ways to get out of the niches where a lot of good things are happening, but they are not happening at scale at this point. And that's really the task for the near future. Thank you.